This video was originally recorded at the Shamans and Siddhas annual program held at Menla Retreat in Dewa Spa. To learn more about this annual program, please visit menla.org.
When I'm teaching people how to journey, I generally ask people to do at least 4 or 5 journeys with me as I'm guiding them, so that they can get their feet under them in the journey process, and begin to look for certain figures in the aspects in the landscape. But I think when you have a little bit more, I mean, if you feel like you can do it, and you feel like you have the guidance that you need to do it, you could go ahead and journey with the intention of asking, is the whale my guide? And asking to meet the whale if it is your guide. And in this way, this is what we talked about in terms of creating flow through between the dream life and the journey work. And it's very helpful to do that, and it's very helpful to see how the universe is working with you, right? And to see how you're being helped. And if you remember, I said yesterday about the shamanic path. The thing that I have seen is that the teachers take particular forms that have meaning to the initiate, and especially in regard to where they are on the particular path that they're on. And so if you think about the level of anxiety that you were in, and if you think about the way in which the whale addressed that anxiety, it's really important to take that in and to understand the way in which you're being guided, and to confirm that process within the journey would be a really good idea. It's wonderful that you've had this experience. It's really wonderful.
And I guess a follow-up question that I had was, both you and Bob have mentioned this word path. I'm wondering whether in shamanism, is it possible for a person to stray from her path?
Oh, sure. What do you think we're all doing here? If we hadn't strayed from our path, we wouldn't be sitting right here.
Well, how do you know? How do you know if you strayed versus encountering difficulty? How does that?
It's how you encounter the difficulty that shows you if you're on the path or not. It's not. And one of the big mistakes that I've seen in a lot of spiritual circles. And this was very prevalent in the 70s. It's like if something bad is happening, and you find this in Christian. I've had Christians come up to me, and when I've had some pretty calamitous things happen to me in my life, and one in particular was pretty much all she wrote. And I had multiple Christians come up to me and say, but you're such a good person, I don't know how this bad thing could have happened to you. And I think that a lot of people have that idea that if something bad happens to you, you are off of the path. And that is incorrect. There are going to be obstacles that arise in your experience as you are seeking to try to find your way toward the understanding, in Buddhist terms, of your own Buddha nature. And all of the obstacles that are a result of the actions that you have taken, or the consequences that, they're not necessarily obstacles, but the consequences of the actions that you've taken are going to present themselves to you as you seek to align yourself with your own best and highest good. And from a depth hypnosis point of view, the symptoms that people bring in for help with are simply a function of the karmic patterns that are obscuring the person's Buddha nature from themselves. And then the depth hypnosis work is just to unravel and to unravel the roots of those symptoms. And so it's important to understand that these symptoms are the teachers. By following the path through them back to their originating source, resolving your traditional relationship with them, then you have a larger sense of yourself and your own goodness and Buddha nature. And this is the path. So the path isn't like skipping down a little lane in the woods and I'm a spiritual person, you know, this kind of spiritual bypass that you see, especially in California. It's a zoo. You know, so it's like, okay, you know, it's like, here I am on the path. I'm doing my best to be on the path. Things are going to arise. They're going to challenge me. I'm going to have, you know, traditional ways of reacting, you know, irritation, impatience, anger, frustration, rage, fury, anywhere along the whole spectrum of anger, right? You could be anywhere there, but you have to work with it. And, you know, this is where the practices of something like the Four Immeasurables are really, really valuable. If you're going to work with Buddhist principles, I have in the bookshop, you'll see there's a CD of some meditations that I did of the Four Immeasurables that are really helpful. You could also download it on the Sacred Stream site. But it's like, then you see, oh God, I've got anger. Okay, time to practice equanimity. Okay, I've got hatred. Time to practice loving kindness. And you can't, I mean, the thing about it is, one of the things that people do is they'll say, okay, I shouldn't be angry. Okay, I'm loving. You know, but you know, you actually have to go into the anger. You actually have to go into it to understand it, because everything is a teacher. And so it's a mistake to think that the spiritual path is just like lollipops and roses. You know, the spiritual path is a very intense path, and you know, you need. And the reason that I like working both with Buddhist practice and shamanic practice is because you need determination and help to stay on the path. And there's much in the Buddhist pantheon array of antidotes to the obstacles that would keep us from knowing our Buddha nature. But one of the reasons I really like working shamanically, in addition to working with Buddhist principles in the process of self-transformation, is because of the relative psychological isolation that we have as Westerners. And one of the things that happens when people begin to meditate is that they're already alone. They already feel alone. And then they're asked to meditate, and it's like, I'm alone. What do I do? You know, I remember I sat on that zafu for almost 20 years in Zen Center, like, you know, what do I do? And there were actually no good teachers there. Like, and I'd go and I'd talk to the teacher, and they go, just be with it. I'm like, I am with it, you know, like, you know, and it's like you know, and it's like, you know, when you have the shamanic experience of having a guide, a benevolent guide in the form of nature that you can trust, as a Westerner, when you're heading into these huge fields of negativity that we all have traversed, with the assistance of the guide, it is so helpful. It really is. It like gives you a cushion, you know. And it's, you know, I know it's, you know, I mean, I know this is an intermediate step on the path to like total enlightenment and non-dual awareness and clear light, you know. But we need those intermediate steps. We're, you know, like if you, you know, like I'm getting ready to do some work with you with the clear light today, and I'm going to do some step-ins to it. If you throw someone in the clear light, you're just going to disintegrate. They're not going to be able to hold it. You know, or they're, I mean, of course they'll still be in the clear light, but they won't know it, right? So You have to, they won't be able to hold the awareness of it. So having these step-ins, with the shamanic guides, where they're different, remember, these guides that are taking the form of nature are step-downs. They're constellations of energetic patterns that hold what the initiate needs in order to move further on their path. And so having this assistance, I have found has been really transformative for me. Like I did Buddhist practice for many years before I started doing shamanic practice, and my Buddhist practice like deepened immeasurably when I started doing shamanic work because of this amelioration in my own sense of psychological isolation. And this is one of the ways in which Buddhism, I think it's a place where Buddhism, as it's adapting to the West, is a place where it needs to focus.
Yeah.
And because in the Eastern cultures where you find most Buddhist practices, you already have too much collective, right? Like everybody is, if you go, for instance, I know every Eastern culture is different, but if you go, for instance, to Japan where they're practicing Zen, that's a culture where it's like, you do not exist as an individual. You only exist as a function of the community. You are only valuable as a member of the community. Don't you dare try to individuate or become independent. We're going to slap you down if you do, and then you're going to have to get drunk in order to be able to do it, and then we'll say it's okay. That's pretty much like Japanese culture in a nutshell. I'm just joking. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be. I don't mean to be like unrespectful or rude in any way, because the Japanese culture, of course, has much, much more to it than that, and I salute all aspects of the Japanese culture. But when I have worked a lot with Japanese people, I used to have a little company in the 90s when everyone wanted to be Japanese, that bubble where everybody, you guys, probably some of you are too young to remember, but there was a moment where the whole world wanted to be Japanese because they had these great business practices. And I set up, with my little translation company that I had, I set up a little consulting company called Cross Cultural Consultants, where we were establishing beachheads for Japanese businessmen in the States, and my partner, who was Japanese, was establishing beachheads for Americans in Japan. And so I got to know the Japanese culture really well. And I also got to know it really well through Zen, because I studied under Suzuki Roshi. I think my estimation is not, while I mean no disrespect to the Japanese culture, this collective consciousness, which has its benefits, has a very different basis for a meditative practice. Because if you have a bunch of people that are over-collectivized and you put them out on a zafu, that meditation practice of zazen is going to be ameliorating to them, because they're going to feel themselves in a way where they haven't really felt themselves before. But if you've got a bunch of Westerners that have already had to, get in there, get independent, get out there, get your bootstraps up. What's the matter with you? Why haven't you made it in the world? And they're all like, what's the matter with me? I'm not good enough, and I'm gonna fail, and then they just sit down on a zafu, and they're like, and like it's all right there, and then everybody's just saying, just be with it, No, we need a little help being with it, right? I don't think my experience I know my experience is not the only, I'm not the only person that's had this, because what I do in my depth hypnosis practice, one of my big specialties for many years has been helping people out of spiritual emergencies. And, I've had every flavor, and I've had hundreds of people coming out of this kind of experience where they have felt isolated in the meditative practice. So I think that it's really, of course, if you stick with it long enough, you plunge into the clear light. You plunge into the uber connectivity of the ground luminosity. But we've all got all these thorn bushes and rocks and shards of glass that are keeping us from that place that we have to be able to dismantle, and we need a little bit of help with that. So the fact that you're having this really hard time, and then you had this beautiful experience of this assistance arriving, and to have the context where you could recognize it, and the context is the shamanic practice. It is well-worn, time-honored, understood in shamanic work that dreams are as important as ordinary reality, and that they provide guidance and vision in invaluable ways. And I can't overemphasize how important this is and how important it is to follow it up. And as you heal that anxiety, you can, and there's ways of working. I teach something called shamanic counseling, that you can work within the journey to heal very deep states. And you can, I don't mean to be messianic about my work. I mean, I think all work is good work. Any kind of work toward consciousness is great work. And I just know this work, so I'm talking about it. But I think that, this combination is really powerful. And that's why one of the reasons I was so excited when Bob wanted to do this class, Shamans and Siddhas, because I don't usually get to talk about the way in which I meld the two. I'm just teaching in one stream or another. And so I really got going there, didn't I? But hopefully that's helpful. I'm just trying to cover all the bases for you.
Immeasurably.
Okay, all right. Okay, yeah.
If we wanted to work with you personally, could you do it long distance?
I do work long distance. I have a little bit of a waiting list, but I started training people because I had such a long waiting list. My first year of practice, I thought I was just going to be doing hypnotherapy, but my years of shamanism and Buddhism and energy medicine all just started dialing in as I was working with people. And by the end of my first year, I had a list like I was never going to get to everyone. So I started training people, and now we have a lot of depth hypnosis practitioners. We have 2 in the room, and Nancy and Simone. And
Simone?
This is Simone.
Are you in New York?
Boston.
Oh.
And Nancy's bi-coastal. But I work on the phone all the time.
Okay.
And depth hypnosis, you can do anything on the phone that you can do in person.
Okay. So then, so people can be put on your waiting list, even if it's
Sure, even if you don't mind waiting. Usually what happens is at the end of the summer, there's always a huge change. Like I just took in like 8 new people at the end of August. And then, there's usually some kind of dropout around, and people go through the cycle. So, but usually there's a dropout around April that people will cycle out. So, it's the one job that you don't want. Well, I do have a client for life, because whenever I work with anyone, I know that we are connected beyond time and space. So, but they don't just keep coming to sessions. There's other ways we work. But I also recommend, if you want to work with me before that, coming to classes that are on the phone. I do classes on the phone all the time. So, and the Shamanic Journey class, as I said, is coming up. Any other questions? Yeah.
I don't know if you're willing, Annie, to talk about the other part, but if you are, it would help me. If you're not, that's cool.
No, I totally am. And I don't want to take up so much space.
What's the other part?
I didn't realize that it might be better to wait. So when we did the journey, I made some suggestions and to go back to the well.
Oh, right.
And so she had a question before, but I don't know whether.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting process. Now is a good time.
But maybe let's come back to it.
Yeah.
And because you are getting the help that you need with Simone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll come back to it. Because there's some work I want to do. I wanted to see if anyone else had Any kind of dream last night that might have been interesting?
I did have a dream last night. I was in like a store or a deli, I don't really know, and it was kind of nefarious. Like kind of the person running it was a little bit off, and there were children in there, and I somehow had this thought that I had to get the children out. And there were quite a few of them, like maybe 6, and it was kind of, I don't know why it was difficult for me to get them out on my own, but for some reason there was another adult there. I don't even know if it was a man or a woman. And I was like, okay, you stay at the end, and at the end of the line of the children, and I'll get like in midway and watch them go out. And I led the 3 children out, and then I turned around and the other children were gone. And I looked around and he found the adult, and I was like, what happened? I lost track of them, and I got really upset, and it was really hard for me. I was like really upset that I couldn't find these kids.
So there's a lot of ways of interpreting that dream. Do you have any ideas about what it might be about?
I think it's probably historical,
In what way?
I don't know, I think it might have to do with family stuff, maybe. And also thinking that I have to, maybe some trust stuff, because obviously, the other person hadn't taken care of the kids.
Did that other person remind you of anyone?
I don't even remember what the person looked like or anything. I don't even remember if it was a man or a woman. I just know that there was a part of me too that was like, well, I have no other choice. I'm going to have this other person, trust that this other person's going to take care of it. And then when I looked around, and I was also like kind of upset with myself because I hadn't, taken the responsibility to get all of them out. But I do think it's definitely historical and rooted in some childhood stuff, for sure. Like I kind of feel responsible for my younger sibling, and I don't even know, maybe it was even symbolic of myself. I don't really know. But.
Well, I mean, this is a really important dream. So there's a couple of ways that we would deal with this in-depth hypnosis, but I'd like to talk about a way to deal with it today, because we're getting ready to do purification rituals, and it's sort of in a modified tantric way. So, but if I might, I'd like to just kind of describe what I think might be going on here, based on what you're saying. So, one of the things when you start on the path, your dreams not only become like a portal for guidance to come through in the form of a guide, but they also become portals for guidance to come through in terms of showing you what you might need to address in order to be able to be more fully on your path, and to be able to find happiness and be able to rest better in the world, right? So here we have, if I'm going to try to describe it, and if I've got it wrong, normally I would spend a lot more time having her describe it, ask the questions. I wouldn't ever presume to say something, but we're just trying to, I don't want to rush, but I don't want to spend, I would love to spend a whole day on it, actually, and then I'd love to do a session, and I'd love to do, we could do a whole session on this. I mean, we could really spend a good time on this. But from what I can tell, we've got a karmic pattern that it revolves around trust and responsibility, right? So let me ask you, because I have a hard time just saying it. So let me ask you, if you were to say, what is the pattern that you have in a sentence? What is the pattern that you have around trust and responsibility? Like what would you, where would you put that?
I don't know, I feel like I have to take, it's hard for me to trust, I guess, but I have to take care of it myself.
Right.
I feel like that's a pattern from childhood that I couldn't rely on someone else, so I had to take care of it myself and take care of my sibling and myself. I think that's
So, okay, so you can't trust that things will be taken care of, and you're the one who has to take care of everything. Or
right.
take responsibility.
Right, and that doesn't always work out either. But.
And then you get mad at yourself when you can't do what you had set out to do and
Right.
taking responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right there, that's huge, right? So, now, one thing to also remember, when we're looking at anything that's occurring in the current life, we are looking at the manifestation, the particular manifestation of a long-standing karmic pattern from a Buddhist perspective, right? So, I teach a class called Relationships and Karma, and in that class, what we look at is the way in which our response to our birth family situation draws forward our karmic patterns in this lifetime. So, and the reason that I like working within this paradigm is because it helps us not feel like we're a victim of our experience, right? So if you think about, okay, I have, coming into this lifetime, I have a karmic pattern where I have not been able to trust that things will be taken care of. I have tried to take on responsibility for things that I'm not actually responsible for. And then I have punished myself for not being able to accomplish the responsibility properly. And I would imagine that punishing yourself is the source of a lot of anguish for you, which you may not have defined in these terms. Is that a good guess or not?
I'm not sure.
Beating yourself up?
Maybe. Yeah.
Do you do that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you do it because you haven't been able to accomplish something that you set out to do in the way that you thought you should?
Yes.
Okay, so then we have a lot to unravel in this pattern. So we're looking at a karmic pattern. We understand that this pattern is coming from a previous lifetime. We're hopefully taking full responsibility for the transformation of this pattern. And you'll hear Bob say 100 times, it's good to take responsibility because then you're in control, right? So you're in control. You can change this. If you're a victim of an irresponsible parent, you can't change it, right? And that probably creates frustration too. But if you think, okay, this is part of an experience that I've had in other lifetimes. I chose this experience through my, either by commission or omission, coming into this lifetime. This is my response to the experience as in my birth family when I did not have my defenses to reality set yet. And my responses are the defense to reality, which is the karmic pattern, right? So we have several aspects of this. We have, first of all, we have the punishing yourself. Mm-hmm. Then we have the taking too much responsibility, and then we have the lack of trust, right? So we could work on any one of those. And I personally, whenever I'm looking at 3 different things to work on, I always look at the one that's causing the most harm. So I would go for the punishing yourself for not being able to accomplish what you set out to do. And that is the pattern that I would look at as we're working with Vajrasattva and doing clearing of karmic patterns. Mm-hmm. And I'll show you, when we get there, I'll show you the moment where you can bring this into the field of Vajrasattva. And it's a way of working. We would work with it differently in death hypnosis, but it's a fantastic way to work. So is that helpful? Mm-hmm. Look at all that came out of one dream, right? Dreams rock. I know you don't feel that way right now, but thank you for sharing that, and that's like super. Hopefully that's helpful. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if you've had any kind of dreams, like especially one of the things that happens when you're coming into a self-transformation process is that your higher self will start delivering emails into your mailbox of your dreams. And you know, in depth hypnosis, we always ask people to pay attention to the dreams that they have coming into the process, because we understand that the dreams are not only diagnosis but prognosis. So we've got a diagnosis. This is the pattern we have to work on, right? And the prognosis is not totally clear at this point, but we do have a diagnosis. So of what needs to be worked on in order for you to have greater happiness, right? So, so if you have had any dreams, like in the last week or so, or any snippet of a dream, sit down with it in the way that we have sat down with it. And I do teach this class on dreams on the phone. We'll be teaching it in Berkeley in December. But you know, it's a very important language to learn, the language of dreams. So, okay. All right. Now, I wanted to check and see if anyone wanted to talk about their experience of connecting with an aspect of the land or the spirit of the land, doing a little, you know, being drawn to do a bit of a ritual or some kind of method of connecting more deeply with this beautiful place. Did anyone have any kind of experience? Did anyone do that work? And anybody have anything? Yeah.
It's interesting because I am drawn to rocks, big, small, and I saw a number of them stacked, which you'll see around the world, but I knew that wasn't it. So I was like, okay, my rocks are abandoning me, and then I was walking up the steps to my room, and I wasn't sure what something was, and I looked down and it was a toad, just sitting there. And I've done a lot of work with animal totems, which is a frog or small frog or that kind of a thing. And I had gotten a frog in Peru, which is about 2,500 years old, and it's sitting on my altar. And I wanted a ritual that I could do all the time that was easy and didn't involve 55 gazillion steps. So then I thought north, south, east, and west. So what I could do is take my frog and point him or her to the direction that we're at now for the season. So it's fall. So what does fall mean? And then every day look at that and say, today, how can I encompass fall? And then when it switches to winter, I'll just change the direction, and then keep going around the wheel. And it seemed like I was incorporating something and I was getting more feedback that you have to work with these frogs for some reason. So.
Great. Okay. All right. And you can, maybe deepen that process by journeying, once you have a little bit more journey under your belt, journey to the frog and ask for further guidance. Yeah, that's great. Brilliant. Okay. Anyone else have an experience with the ritual, connecting them more strongly, or feeling more strongly the power of the unseen through the ritual? Of course, everyone did their homework, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've read different ideas of sharing your animal guide or your spirit guide with other humans, and kind of the effect it has on its potency. Can you speak to that?
As Buddha said, you only speak to people who have ears to hear and eyes to see, right? Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, I mean, you have to find what your comfort level is, but and you have to see, how much you can talk without losing the power. I never speak about my shamanic practice to anyone outside of circle. Like most people, like out in the world, they have no idea what I do, or that's cool, but I have a student who talks about all of his journeys at cocktail parties. He's a stockbroker, and he goes to lots of cocktail parties, and he talks, he regales everyone with his journeys, and he finds that to be very helpful. So, and I certainly get a lot of referrals from that. So, so that is benefiting because it is opening people's minds to some other way of being, even though it's happening in a context where you would not really expect enlightenment to occur, right? You know, so of course any context is a place where enlightenment could occur, but generally alcohol is, you know, certain places are not the first thing you come to. So, although I don't mean to be critical of people who drink alcohol. So, unless they're addicted, and then we have to talk. If they want to. But if they don't want to, that's fine. Sorry. I'm like so compulsive in my culture. So I think it's important for you to come to that decision yourself. Yeah. And it's different for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. So any other? Yes. Yes.
Can I ask a very general question?
Sure.
So some of the things that you're talking about are new to me, and some concepts especially. So, and I have an understanding of what you're talking about through my own, I don't know, whatever I get out of it. So, let's say, for example, you talk about the spirit world or different realms, or you know, all those things. Is it something to, like, is that something that is, according to every different person, is that something that you have a different understanding, or is it something, I don't know how to express it, but I guess those concepts are things that you also construct on your own a little bit?
Sure.
Like, it's not a set thing, I am guessing. It doesn't have definitions, or it doesn't have explanations that much, but as a whole, as you go through, does it make sense in the way you interpret things, or do things reveal themselves to you in time, and does that create an idea or an understanding?
I think I'm going to try to answer your question. I'm going to try to, and if I don't answer it, tell me. Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm clear enough either, but
it's a very important question. If you're asking what I think you're asking, it's a very, very important question. So I'm going to answer it the way that I think you're answering, that you're asking, and please ask for clarification. So on one level, the way that I would answer that question is, I would say that there are many different ways of understanding reality. And it's important to understand that whatever construct we're using to understand reality is a construct. And the important thing for me as a teacher is to work with constructs that have enough structure to offer help, but not so much structure that it stops the process. Right? And the reason that I like working the way that I work, and especially the way that I work shamanically, again, it's not pure shamanism. It's an adaptation that's highly informed by Buddhism. Is that everyone has a prism that they view reality through because of their karmic patterns. And so everyone needs different types of clarification to that prism because of that prism being different from everyone else's. And the Buddha said, he said, you're going to have to get used to the fact that I'm giving you contradictory teachings because some people have different needs than others, right? And I think it's very important to have, if you're working within a paradigm, but that paradigm accommodates all of the different ways of perceiving reality and all of the different ways of experiencing reality. And then all of the different needs that come out of that experience of reality. And all of the learnings that come out of that experience of reality are completely unique to each person. So you need a construct or a paradigm that allows for this, but also that has enough structure to meet the structure of the prism of each person, but that it also leads the person into the larger field of awareness beyond the prism of their own view, right? And I mean, I think that Buddhism is good with that, and I think the way that I work shamanically is good with that. And I'm not saying it's the only way to work, but I think it's very important to say that this isn't for everyone. Not everyone has to do it this way, you know, and to understand that whatever your particular experience is completely valid. That even if it's different from this person's experience, it is valid. And it's important not to try to match your experience to another person. Because you're like, oh, that person's having that experience, I should try to match that. Not because that's what a lot of people do. That people spend so much time comparing, you know, and it's completely unvalid because everyone has a different thing that they need to bring them closer to their own Buddha nature. And so by trying to compare yourself to another person and try to meet that comparison, then you have just created an obstacle to knowing yourself, right? So then you have to come back and be with yourself. And one of the reasons I like working shamanically is because it is such direct access to guidance about your own experience. And so that you can know your own experience. And especially when you kind of bring Vipassana ideas into the journey, you know, like how do I transform this? So, did I answer your question?
Yes, yes. I mean, maybe something that could make it a little more clear also is, for example, I'd like to ask you about, you talk about these spirit helpers, and I want to ask you 1,000 questions. So what are they like? What is their nature? What, you know, it's like just to intellectually define something. It's maybe a need that I'm used to thinking that way in life. But then maybe as you're describing, it is something not to really know in that manner. It is something to, you're just giving some points, you're pointing to certain things that create a kind of a vague idea. Maybe that through a personal experience that will clarify in time through everybody's own experience, I guess. It's not a set thing, I'm guessing.
That's exactly right. And you're pointing to something that's very, very important, which is we're used to understanding information conceptually and having the learning come conceptually. And that's a very important aspect of learning. But if we are to truly know ourselves, we have to understand that we are in the unknown. We don't, in order to discover, you have to have something to discover. And what the journey does is it teaches you, like to say, I could say, okay, these are all my, 700 guides, and this is what each one of them does, and this is what each power has. And what good would that do you? You have to know your own, you have to learn your own guidance. And you discover that through the experience that is offered to you viscerally through the journey. And that's what creates power. That's what creates a sense of being able to trust yourself and to be in the world and to know your own voice and have the courage to follow your own path. You know, this is a very Gnostic path. Do you know that word Gnosis? It's information that you receive inward that you apply to your life. And so it is, you're always in the unknown. Often you don't look back. You don't know where you are until you look back on the path and you go, oh, that's where I am. Because you're looking at the path that you took to where you got here. But you had no idea where you were going. So, does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we have a little bathroom break and then we're going to head into some meditation.
This video was brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US membership community and viewers like you. To learn more about the benefits of Tibet House membership, including special trips around the world with Professor Thurman, please visit tibethouse.us. Trips in 2019 include Bhutan.